The morning sky over New York City changed from blue to black in less than 10 minutes. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the coffee shop window and watched the massive ships float down like dark clouds made of metal. Each ship was bigger than 10 city blocks put together. Their surfaces were so smooth and dark they seemed to eat the sunlight. "What are those things?" asked the man next to her. His coffee cup shook in his hands. Sarah did not answer. She could not speak. All around the world, the same scene played out in every major city: London, Tokyo, Moscow, Cairo. Everywhere humans looked up to see the alien ships blocking out the sun. Commander Vexathara stood on the bridge of the lead ship and looked down at the blue planet below. Her tall, thin body moved with smooth grace as she walked between the control stations. Her skin was gray like stone, and her large black eyes showed no emotion. She had done this many times before on many different worlds. "Begin the scanning process," she ordered in her cold, clear voice. "I want full population counts and resistance assessments within 1 hour." The bridge crew worked quickly at their glowing panels. Numbers and maps filled the air in front of them. Earth had over 7 billion humans scattered across all the continents. Their technology was primitive, still using chemical weapons and metal vehicles. Their governments were divided into hundreds of small groups that often fought each other. "This will be easy," said Subcommander Kethamora as she reviewed the data. "They cannot even work together as a species. Their weapons cannot pierce our shields. We should have full collections completed within 3 months. Vexathara nodded. In her 3,000 years of life, she had conquered 17 different worlds for the Zephyrian Empire. The pattern was always the same. First, the target species would try to fight with whatever crude weapons they had. Then they would surrender when they realized how hopeless their situation was. Finally, they would accept their fate as workers in the Empire's great machine. "Deploy the pacification fields over all major population centers," Vexathara commanded. "Begin collection operations immediately." On Earth, the first attacks came without warning. Beams of blue light shot down from the ships and hit every military base, every government building, every police station. The buildings did not explode or burn. They simply stopped working. All the computers died. All the vehicles stopped running. All the weapons became useless chunks of metal. In Washington, D.C., President Martinez stood in the dead communication room of the White House and tried to understand what had happened. Every phone was silent. Every screen was dark. Even the emergency radios produced nothing but static. "Sir, we have reports coming in from runners," said his aide, breathing hard from climbing 20 flights of stairs. "The same thing has happened everywhere. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, all dead. No power, no communications, nothing works." The president looked out his window at the massive ship hanging over the city like a black mountain. Small dots were falling from it like rain. As they got closer, he could see they were not raindrops. They were some kind of vehicles. Dr. Elena Vasquez was in her laboratory at MIT when the lights went out. She was working on a new type of solar panel when everything around her stopped humming and clicking. Through her lab window, she watched the small alien craft land in the courtyard outside. The craft opened like a flower, and tall gray figures stepped out. They moved in perfect formation, each one carrying a device that looked like a combination of a weapon and a tool. Elena pressed herself against the wall and tried to stay hidden, but it was no use. A strange feeling washed over her mind, like warm water. All her thoughts became slow and fuzzy. Her muscles relaxed, and she found herself walking toward the aliens even though she did not want to. Around her, she could see other people doing the same thing. They all had the same blank, peaceful expression on their faces. The alien in front raised its device and spoke in perfect English, though its mouth barely moved. "You will come with us. You will not resist. You will work for the good of the Empire." Elena tried to fight against the strange feeling in her head, but it was like trying to swim through thick honey. Her thoughts kept slipping away from her. All around the campus, hundreds of people walked in neat lines toward the alien ships. In downtown Chicago, Captain Marcus Chen of the Army National Guard watched from his disabled truck as the aliens herded people into groups. The blue light from their ships made everyone calm and cooperative. But Marcus had been in the basement of his building when the wave hit. Most of the effect had been blocked by the concrete and steel. He could think clearly, but he had to pretend, to be affected like everyone else. He shuffled along with the crowd, keeping his eyes down and his face blank. But inside his mind, he was studying everything. The way the aliens moved, the way their equipment worked, the way they organized the humans into groups. The aliens separated people by age and health. The strong and young went to one area, the old and sick went to another. Children were kept with adults, but Marcus could see the aliens were making notes about each person. One of the gray creatures approached him with its scanning device. Marcus felt the machine studying his body, reading his health and strength. The alien made some marks on a glowing tablet and pointed him toward a group of other healthy adults. "You will work in the mining operations," the alien said in its emotionless voice. "You will extract materials needed by the Empire. If you work well, you will be fed. If you resist, you will suffer." Marcus nodded and tried to look empty and defeated like the people around him. But inside, his mind was already working on plans. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan. He knew how to fight an enemy with better weapons and technology. The key was to never give up, no matter how impossible things looked. All over the world, the same process continued day and night. The aliens worked with machine-like efficiency, loading humans onto transport ships and flying them to collection centers. By the end of the first week, over 50 million humans had been captured from major cities across the globe. Vexathara reviewed the reports with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The humans had shown some initial resistance, but the pacification fields had worked perfectly. Within a few months, she would deliver a full cargo of workers to the Empire and receive another promotion. "Commander," said Kethamora as she approached with her daily report, "we have encountered some unusual behavior patterns." "Explain," Vexathara said without looking up from her work. "The humans continue to display protective behaviors toward their offspring and packmates, even under neural suppression. Parents attempt to shield their children during processing. Strangers share their food rations with weaker individuals. Some even place themselves between our forces and other humans during collection operations." Vexathara finally looked up. "This is normal pack behavior. All primitive species show similar patterns initially. It will fade as the conditioning takes effect." "Yes, Commander. But the behavior is stronger than we observed on other worlds. The humans seem to value their packmates more than their own survival." "Irrelevant," Vexathara said, returning to her work. "Increase the conditioning intensity if necessary. Within 1 month, they will be completely compliant workers. The Empire requires productivity, not sentiment." But as she spoke those words, Vexathara could not shake a small feeling of unease. In all her centuries of conquest, she had never encountered a species that put others before themselves so consistently. Perhaps the humans were simply more primitive than most. Time would tell. The work camps stretched across the Nevada desert like ugly metal scars on the earth. Thousands of humans moved between the gray buildings under the watchful eyes of Zephyrian guards. The aliens had built these camps in just 2 weeks, using machines that could reshape matter itself. Elena Vasquez carried a heavy toolbox toward the engineering section where she had been assigned to work. The neural conditioning made her movements slow and her thoughts fuzzy, but she was fighting it every day. Each morning, she forced herself to remember who she was and what she had lost. The aliens had separated her from her husband and daughter during the first week. She did not know if they were alive or dead. That uncertainty ate at her heart like acid, but it also gave her strength. She would find them or die trying. In the engineering bay, Elena worked alongside 50 other humans to maintain the aliens' mining equipment. The Zephyrians treated them like smart animals, useful but not worth talking to. They gave orders through their translation devices and expected immediate obedience. But Elena was learning things the aliens did not expect her to learn. She had 3 degrees in physics and engineering, and her mind was still sharp despite the conditioning. Every day, she studied the alien technology while pretending to simply follow orders. The Zephyrian machines were incredibly advanced, but they had a weakness. They were designed for a society where everyone followed rules without question. The aliens never expected their tools to be used against them, so they had not built in many security measures. Elena began to understand how their energy systems worked. She learned the basic principles of their gravity manipulation technology. Most importantly, she started to see flaws in their overconfident designs. "You work faster than the others. said a voice behind her. Elena turned to see a Zephyrian technician watching her. The alien's name was difficult to pronounce, but the humans called him Gray 6 because of the markings on his uniform. "I follow instructions," Elena said, in the flat tone that the conditioning was supposed to produce. "Yes, but you anticipate the next step. You see problems before they occur. This is unusual for your species." Elena kept her face blank, but inside, her mind was racing. The alien was testing her somehow. She had to be very careful. "I learn quickly," she said simply. Gray 6 studied her for a long moment, then moved on to check other workers. Elena continued her tasks, but she made sure to work a little slower and make a few small mistakes. She could not let them know how much she was actually learning. Meanwhile, in the mining section of the camp, Marcus Chen was having his own revelations about their captors. The aliens made the humans dig deep tunnels to extract rare metals from the Earth. The work was backbreaking, and many people collapsed from exhaustion every day. But Marcus noticed something strange. When someone fell, other humans would immediately help them, even though it meant working harder themselves. They shared their small portions of food with anyone who was sick or weak. They whispered encouragement to each other when the guards were not watching. The aliens punished this behavior when they caught it, but it never stopped. If anything, the punishment seemed to make the humans more determined to help each other. Marcus had been organizing small resistance cells throughout the camp. He could not do much while the neural conditioning was active, but he could prepare for the future. He identified the strongest and smartest people in each work group. He memorized the guards' patrol patterns. He studied the camp's layout and security systems. Most importantly, he began to spread a simple message. Do not give up. No matter how hopeless things looked, they had to keep fighting. Even if they could only fight in small ways, they had to resist. "The aliens do not understand us," he whispered to a group of workers during their brief rest period. "They think we are like them, but we are not. They cannot break what makes us human." In the women's section of the camp, Dr. Sarah Kim was learning the same lesson. She was a psychiatrist who had been studying the effects of the neural conditioning on herself and others. What she discovered gave her both hope and terror. The conditioning worked by suppressing certain brain functions, particularly those related to individual will and creative thinking. It was designed to make people obedient and predictable. But it could not completely destroy the human capacity for love and sacrifice. Parents still tried to protect their children, even under heavy conditioning. Strangers still helped each other without being asked. People still found ways to show kindness and compassion despite the aliens' attempts to turn them into machines. "We are stronger than they know," Sarah told Elena during one of their secret meetings in the waste recycling area. "The conditioning can slow us down, but it cannot change what we are at our core." "Then we need to find a way to use that strength," Elena replied. "I am learning about their technology. Their machines are powerful, but they have weaknesses. If we can find the right opportunity—" Their conversation was interrupted by shouting from the main compound. A group of children had been caught trying to steal extra food rations for some sick adults. The Zephyrian guards were dragging them toward the punishment facility. Without thinking, dozens of adults ran toward the children, trying to protect them. The guards activated their pain weapons, sending bolts of blue energy that made people scream and fall to the ground. But more humans kept coming, even as they were being hurt. Sub-Commander Keth Mora watched the scene from her observation post and felt a strange sensation in her chest. On every other world the Zephyrians had conquered, the natives had learned to avoid punishment by becoming completely selfish. They would watch their own family members suffer rather than risk pain themselves. But these humans were different. They kept trying to protect each other, even when it was clearly hopeless, even when it only brought them more suffering. "Increase the punishment level," ordered the guard captain through his communication device. "Make them understand that resistance is futile." But as the pain weapons fired again and again, more humans joined the crowd around the children. They formed a wall of bodies, absorbing the punishment themselves rather than letting it reach the young ones. Finally, the guard captain gave up. "Take the adults for punishment instead. Leave the children." As the guards dragged away 20 adults who had volunteered to take the children's place, Kethemora felt that strange sensation in her chest again. She did not understand what it was, but it made her uncomfortable. That night, Vexthara reviewed the daily reports with growing frustration. After 1 month of conditioning, the humans should have been completely broken. They should have been working efficiently without any thoughts of resistance or escape. Instead, productivity was actually getting worse. The humans were finding new ways to help each other and slow down their work. They had developed a complex system of hand signals and coded words that allowed them to communicate despite constant surveillance. Most disturbing of all, they showed no signs of losing their will to resist. If anything, they seemed to be growing stronger and more united every day. "Perhaps we need to increase the conditioning intensity again," suggested Kethemora. "We have already increased it 3 times, Vexthara replied coldly. "Any higher, and we risk permanent brain damage. Damaged workers are useless workers." "Then what do you suggest, Commander?" Vexthara stared at the reports for a long moment. In her 3,000 years of life, she had never encountered a species that could not be broken. Every intelligent race eventually accepted their fate when faced with overwhelming force. But these humans were different somehow. They had something that the Zephyrians had never encountered before. Something that made them stronger rather than weaker when they suffered. "Double the guard patrols," she finally said. "Separate any humans who show leadership qualities, and prepare for the possibility that we may need to use more extreme measures." But even as she gave those orders, Vexthara felt a small doubt creeping into her mind. For the first time in her long career, she was not certain that the Empire would achieve victory. 6 months had passed since the aliens arrived, and everything had changed. The work camps that once held broken, defeated humans now buzzed with secret activity. Elena Vasquez had become the heart of a growing network of resistance fighters, who called themselves the Underground. Elena's breakthrough came on a cold morning in the engineering section. She had been studying a damaged piece of alien equipment that the guards had carelessly left on her workbench. As she took it apart, to repair it, she discovered something amazing. The Zephyrian technology was built on the idea that users would always follow safety protocols. The aliens never imagined that someone might deliberately cause their machines to fail in dangerous ways. Because of this, their safety systems were weak and easy to bypass. "Look at this," Elena whispered to Marcus during their secret meeting. In the old storage tunnel they had dug behind the waste facility, she showed him a small device she had built from stolen alien parts. "This can overload their power systems. If we place it in the right location, we can knock out the energy grid for the entire section." Marcus studied the device with admiration. "How many of these can you make?" "With the right materials, maybe 20 or 30. But we need to be very careful. If they catch us..." "They will not catch us," Marcus said firmly. "We have people watching, every guard patrol. We know their schedules better than they do." The resistance had grown far beyond what anyone expected. Nearly every human in the camp was involved in some way. Some gathered information about alien movements. Others stole supplies and equipment. The doctors worked to counteract the neural conditioning. Even the children helped by carrying messages and creating distractions. But their greatest achievement was something the aliens could never have predicted. The humans had learned to work together in ways that made no sense to Zephyrian thinking. Dr. Sarah Kim had discovered that the neural conditioning could be partially reversed through meditation and mental exercises. She taught these techniques to others, who spread them throughout the camp. Slowly, people began to think more clearly and move more freely. More importantly, they began to remember who they were and what they were fighting for. "The key is not to fight the conditioning directly," Sarah explained to a group of new volunteers in the medical section. "Instead, focus on your connections to other people. Remember the ones you love. Think about why you want to protect them. Love is stronger than any machine they can build." Meanwhile, on the main ship orbiting Earth, Vexthara was dealing with problems she had never faced before. Reports were coming in from camps all over the world. Production was falling. Equipment was breaking down for no apparent reason. Workers were becoming increasingly difficult to control. "The humans are organized," reported the camp commander from Australia. "They have some kind of communication network that we cannot detect. When we punish one group, others in completely Different sections respond as if they received a signal. That is impossible, Vexathara replied. Our surveillance systems monitor all known forms of communication. They cannot be sending messages without us knowing. Nevertheless, Commander, the evidence is clear. Yesterday, we increased work quotas in Mining Section 7. Within hours, productivity dropped in Processing Section 12, which is completely separate. There is no logical explanation except coordinated resistance. Vexathara ended the communication and stared out at the blue planet below. The humans were doing something that the Zephyrians did not understand. They were acting as one organism despite being separated into different camps across the globe. The answer came from an unexpected source. Sub-Commander Kethmora had been spending more time in the camps, trying to understand why the conditioning was failing. What she saw there disturbed her in ways she could not explain. "Commander, I believe I know what is happening," she said during their morning briefing. "The humans are not communicating through technology. They are using something else." "Explain." "They call it empathy, the ability to feel what others feel, even at a distance. When humans in one camp suffer, somehow humans in other camps know about it and respond. It is not logical, but it appears to be real." Vexthara's large black eyes narrowed. "That is impossible. No species can share emotions across vast distances without technological assistance." "I thought so too, Commander, but I have observed it myself. When we separated families during processing, the separated members became agitated at exactly the same time, even when they were in different facilities. When we punish workers in one location, stress levels increase in workers hundreds of miles away who have no way of knowing what happened. The concept was so alien to Zephyrian thinking that Vexathara could barely process it. The Empire was built on the idea that individuals could be controlled through fear and punishment. The notion that beings could somehow share strength across impossible distances challenged everything she believed, but the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. The human resistance was growing stronger every day, and traditional methods of control were not working. "Then we will try a different approach," Vexathara said finally. "If they insist on working together, we will show them the cost of their foolishness." The new strategy was brutal and direct. Instead of punishing individuals for resistance, the aliens would punish entire groups. If one person was caught stealing, 10 would be executed. If sabotage occurred in one section, all workers in that section would lose their food rations for a week. The plan backfired spectacularly. When the aliens announced the new policy, something extraordinary happened. Instead of becoming more careful, to avoid punishment, the humans became more willing to sacrifice themselves for others. Elena watched in amazement as an elderly man named Robert stepped forward to confess to a theft he had not committed. A young woman had been caught taking medicine for her sick child, and under the new rules, 10 people would die for her crime. "I stole the medicine," Robert announced to the shocked guards. "The others are innocent." "That is not possible," said the guard captain. "We saw the female take the items." "Then we both stole them," said another voice. Maria Gonzalez, a teacher from Mexico, walked forward to stand beside Robert. "I was helping." "And me," said Tom Bradley, a farmer from Iowa. One by one, people stepped forward to claim responsibility for the theft. Soon there were over 50 people standing together, all claiming to be guilty of the same crime. The Zephyrian guards did not know what to do. They could not execute 50 people for one small theft, but they also could not ignore such massive defiance of their authority. In the end, they punished no one. The incident was reported to Vexathara as resolved through alternative disciplinary measures, but word of the humans' solidarity spread throughout all the camps like wildfire. If the aliens tried to punish some, everyone would share the blame. If they threatened many, a few would take all the responsibility. The Zephyrians found themselves unable to use their most effective tool, fear. How could they frighten beings who were more afraid of letting others suffer than of suffering themselves? The situation grew worse when the humans began to show kindness to their captors. Injured guards found their wounds treated by human doctors who risked punishment to help. Alien equipment was repaired by human engineers who could have easily sabotaged it instead. Kethmora experienced this kindness personally when she collapsed from exhaustion during a camp inspection. The neural conditioning should have kept the humans focused on their work, but instead several of them rushed to help her. Dr. Sarah Kim checked her vital signs and gave her water, even though helping an alien guard could result in severe punishment. A maintenance worker named David created shade for her using a piece of metal sheeting. Others stood guard to make sure she was not disturbed while she recovered. "Why?" Kethmora asked Sarah as her strength returned. "Why do you help me? I am your captor. I have caused you suffering." Sarah looked at her with eyes that held no anger, only sadness. "Because you are hurt, and I am a doctor. That is all I need to know." The simple answer hit Kethmora like a physical blow. In all her years of service to the Empire, she had never encountered such uncomplicated goodness. The humans helped her not because they wanted something in return, but because helping others was simply what they did. That night, Kethmora stood in her quarters and stared at her reflection in the polished metal wall. For the first time in her life, she wondered if the Empire was wrong about everything. If these primitive creatures could show such compassion to their enemies, what did that say about her own people who showed no compassion to anyone? The question haunted her dreams and followed her through the next day, and she was not the only Zephyrian beginning to have such doubts. The change in Subcommander Kethmora did not go unnoticed. Other Zephyrian officers saw her spending more time observing the humans instead of simply controlling them. They watched her ask questions about human behavior that no proper officer should care about. Most disturbing of all, they saw her hesitate before giving orders that would cause suffering. "Kethmora's efficiency ratings have dropped 12% this month," reported Security Chief Zaxthor during the daily command meeting. "She has also filed 17 requests for clarification on punishment protocols. This is highly unusual behavior." Commander Vexathera studied the reports with growing concern. Kethmora had been one of her most reliable officers for over 2 centuries. If the humans were somehow affecting her judgment, it could be a sign of a much larger problem. A sign. "Her to ship duties for the next rotation," Vexathera ordered. "No more direct contact with the prisoners until further notice." But the damage was already done. Kethmora's questions had planted seeds of doubt in other officers' minds. Junior Lieutenant Kelvara had begun to notice how human children never stopped trying to comfort each other, even under the harshest conditions. Tech specialist Nixmoth had started wondering why human workers fixed alien equipment perfectly even when they could have sabotaged it easily. Most dangerous of all, Guard Captain Yethkala had witnessed something that shook her to her core. It happened during what the humans called the Great Sharing. Food rations had been cut in half as punishment for continued resistance activities. The aliens expected this to create competition and fighting among the prisoners. Instead, the humans organized a system to make sure everyone got enough to eat. Yethkala watched in disbelief as healthy adults gave most of their food to children and elderly prisoners. Parents went hungry, so their children could have full meals. Strong workers shared with weak ones. Even people who barely knew each other acted like family. "This makes no sense," she muttered to her patrol partner as they watched the evening meal distribution. "They should be fighting over the limited resources. Every other species we have conquered showed increased aggression under these conditions." "Perhaps they are too stupid to understand competition," her partner replied. But Yethkala was not convinced. The humans were clearly intelligent. They had built complex societies and technologies before the conquest. Their resistance activities showed remarkable planning and coordination. They were not stupid. They were something else entirely. The truth hit her 3 days later when a human child approached her during patrol. The little girl could not have been more than 6 years old. She had somehow escaped the children's section and made her way to the guard post where Yethkala was standing. In her small hands, she carried a crude drawing made with charcoal on a piece of scrap metal. "I made this for you," the child said, holding up the drawing. Yethkala stared at the image in shock. It showed a tall gray figure and a small human figure holding hands under a yellow sun. Above them, written in careful letters, were the words, "Friends Forever." You made this for me?" Yethkala asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The child nodded enthusiastically. "You look sad. My mama says when someone is sad, you should give them something nice to make them feel better." For a moment, Yethkala could not speak. No one had ever given her a gift before. In Zephyrian society, resources were distributed according to rank and function. Personal gestures of kindness were unknown and unnecessary. "Why do you think I am sad?" she finally managed to ask. "Because you have to stand here all by yourself," the child replied with simple wisdom. "That must be lonely." The words hit Yethkala like a weapon blast. Lonely. Yes, that was exactly what she was. She had spent 300 years following orders without question, never forming close relationships with anyone, never receiving or giving affection. She had not even realized she was capable of feeling loneliness until this small human pointed it out. Before she could respond, other guards arrived to take the child back to her section. But the damage was done. Yethkala stared at the crude drawing for hours after her shift ended. Something inside her chest felt different, warm and painful at the same time. She was not the only Zephyrian affected by human kindness. Similar incidents were happening throughout the camps. Human prisoners were treating their alien captors with a compassion that made no logical sense. When guard technician Veltum injured his arm in a mechanical accident, human engineer David Morrison risked severe punishment to help repair the damage. Instead of letting his captor suffer, David used his knowledge of alien physiology to create a temporary support brace. "Why do you help me?" Veltum asked, echoing the same question Kethmora had asked. "Because you are hurt," David replied simply. "And because I can help. That is enough." The answer haunted Veltum for days. In his culture, help was only given in exchange for something of value. The idea of helping someone simply because they needed help was completely foreign to him. Meanwhile, Elena Vasquez and Marcus Chen were preparing for their most ambitious operation yet. Elena had learned enough about Zephyrian technology to build several powerful explosive devices using alien components. Marcus had identified weak points in the camp's security system and mapped escape routes for over 500 people. But their plan was different from anything the aliens expected. Instead of trying to escape and leave others behind, they were going to liberate everyone or die in the attempt. "We cannot abandon the children, the sick, or the elderly," Marcus explained to the resistance leaders. "If we run and leave them here, we are no better than our captors. We all go free together, or none of us goes free at all." The other humans agreed without question. This kind of thinking made perfect sense to them, but it would have been incomprehensible to their Zephyrian captors. Elena's bombs were not designed to kill aliens. They were designed to disable the technology that kept humans trapped. The power generators, the neural suppression fields, the communication systems, all of it would go down at once, giving everyone a chance to escape. But Elena knew the aliens would fight back with deadly force. Many humans would die in the battle. That followed. She also knew that some of them would choose to sacrifice themselves to help others escape. "Are you ready for what this will cost?" she asked Marcus during their final planning meeting. "I have been ready since the day they took my family," Marcus replied. "The only question is whether we will make their sacrifice count for something." The attack began at dawn on a Tuesday morning that would forever change both species. Elena's devices detonated simultaneously across the camp, sending cascades of electrical failure through the alien systems. For the first time in months, the neural suppression fields went down completely. Humans throughout the facility felt their minds clear and their strength return. Marcus led the assault on the main guard post while other teams attacked strategic targets throughout the camp. But instead of using conventional military tactics, the humans employed strategies that no alien computer could predict or counter. They used suicide attacks not out of desperation, but as calculated moves to save others. Pilot Jennifer Walsh crashed a stolen alien scout ship into the main communications array, ensuring that the camp could not call for reinforcements, even though she knew the collision would kill her. Engineer Robert Kim overloaded the power systems that controlled the perimeter barriers, creating an escape route for hundreds of people. The overload killed him instantly, but his sacrifice opened the way to freedom. Most shocking of all, the humans began offering mercy to their Zephyrian captors. When alien guards surrendered or were wounded, human fighters provided medical care and safe passage instead of revenge. Guard Captain Yethkala found herself surrounded by human fighters near the main gate. She had lost her weapon and expected. to be killed immediately. Instead, the human leader, a woman named Sandra Phillips, extended her hand. "Come with us," Sandra said. "You do not have to be part of this system anymore." I do not understand," Yethkala stammered. "I am your enemy." "You were never our enemy," Sandra replied. "You were just following orders because you did not know there was another choice. Now you do." For the first time in her 3 centuries of life, Yethkala made a choice based on her own conscience rather than her orders. She took the human's hand and allowed herself to be led toward freedom. But the battle was far from over. Commander Vexithara had received reports of the uprising and was preparing to unleash the full military might of the Zephyrian fleet against the escaped prisoners. What she did not know was that her own officers were beginning to question whether they wanted to fight for the Empire anymore. Commander Vexithara stood on the bridge of her flagship and stared at the chaos below. Reports were flooding in from camps across the globe: widespread uprisings, mass escapes, equipment destroyed, guards abandoning their posts. But the most disturbing, reports were not about human actions. They were about Zephyrian responses. "Commander, we have a problem," announced Communications Officer Dex Malik, his voice tight with worry. 17% of our ground forces are refusing direct orders. They claim they cannot fire on beings who have shown them kindness. Vexithara's hands tightened into fists. "Impossible. Our soldiers are trained to follow orders without question. Personal feelings are irrelevant to military operations." "Nevertheless, Commander, many units are reporting combat refusal. Some officers have actually joined the human escapees. Guard, Captain Yethkala was seen leading a group of mixed humans and Zephyrians away from Camp Designation 7. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of machines. In 3,000 years of Zephyrian military history, soldiers had never refused orders because of emotional attachment to enemies. The concept was so alien that Vexithara struggled to process it. Sub-Commander Kethamora approached hesitantly from her station. "Commander, I request permission to speak freely." "Granted. I believe we are facing something unprecedented. The humans have not just resisted our physical control, they have infected our forces with their way of thinking. Our soldiers are beginning to value individual life over imperial duty." Vexithara turned to face her second-in-command. "And how do you propose we solve this problem?" Kethamora hesitated for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Perhaps the problem is not with our soldiers, Commander. Perhaps the problem is with our orders." The bridge became completely silent. Officers at their stations stopped working and stared in shock. No one had ever questioned imperial policy so directly in Vexithara's presence. "Explain your meaning," Vexithara said in a dangerously quiet voice. "The humans have shown us something we had forgotten," Kethamora continued, her words growing stronger. "They have shown us what it means to care for others more than ourselves, to choose compassion over duty, to sacrifice for love rather than fear." "Those are weaknesses," Vexithara snapped. "Emotional responses that interfere with rational decision-making." "Are they, Commander? Then why are we losing this war? Why are our most disciplined soldiers laying down their weapons? Why does every act of human kindness make our forces weaker rather than stronger?" Before Vexithara could respond, alarms began, sounding throughout the ship. On the main display screen, images appeared from the camps below. Thousands of humans were streaming out of the facilities, but they were not alone. Hundreds of Zephyrian soldiers were walking beside them, some helping to carry wounded humans, others sharing their supplies. "Sir, we are receiving surrender requests from 12 different ground commanders," reported the tactical officer. "They are asking for safe passage to neutral territories." Vexithara stared at the impossible scenes playing out on her screens. Her perfect, disciplined army was dissolving before her eyes. Soldiers who had served the Empire for centuries were choosing to protect the very beings they had been sent to enslave. But the final blow to her worldview came from an unexpected source. On the largest screen, a transmission appeared from the surface. It showed a group of humans and Zephyrians working together to treat wounded from both species. Human doctors were operating on alien soldiers, while Zephyrian medics tended to injured humans. In the center of the group stood Elena Vasquez, the human engineer whose resistance had caused so much trouble. She was speaking directly to the camera with calm confidence. "Commander Vexithara," Elena said, looking directly into the camera as if she could see through space to the ship's bridge. I know you are watching this. I want you to understand something important. We are not your enemies. We never were. We are just people who want to live free and help others do the same. Elena gestured to the mixed group of humans and aliens working around her. Your soldiers are not traitors. They are not weak. They have simply remembered something your empire forgot long ago. That every life has value. That cruelty is a choice, not a necessity. That strength comes from protecting others, not from dominating them. The engineer paused and looked directly at the camera again. You can order your ships to attack us. You can try to recapture us or kill us. But you cannot undo what has already happened. Your people have seen another way to live. They have experienced kindness and given kindness in return. That knowledge will spread through your empire like light through darkness. Elena smiled, and there was no hatred in her expression, only sadness and hope. We do not ask you to join us, Commander. We only ask you to let us go. Take your ships and return to your empire. Tell them what you have seen here. Tell them that there is a better way. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Vexathera stood motionless for several minutes, processing what she had witnessed. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders that did not come. Finally, Tactical Officer Luxandra spoke up. Commander, orbital bombardment systems are charged and ready. We can eliminate all surface targets within 30 minutes. Vexathara turned to look at her crew. These soldiers had served under her command for decades. She had trained them, led them through countless battles, shaped them into perfect instruments of imperial will. But as she looked into their faces, she saw something she had never noticed before. Behind their disciplined expressions, there was doubt, fear, and underneath it all, a deep sadness that she was only now beginning to understand. Commander, Luxandra prompted. Orders? Vexathara walked slowly to the main command console. Her finger hovered over the bombardment activation key. One touch would unleash enough firepower to turn the entire region into glass. It would eliminate the human resistance and make an example for any Zephyrian soldiers considering defection. But it would also destroy hundreds of her own people who had chosen mercy over duty. For the first time in her 3,000-year life, Vexathara hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, she heard something that changed everything. From the bridge's communication system came a sound she had never heard before on a Zephyrian ship, the sound of crying. She turned to see Kethamora standing at her station with tears flowing down her gray cheeks. The sub-commander was staring at a small piece of metal in her hands, the crude drawing that the human child had made for Guard Captain Yethkala. She was 6 years old, Kethamora whispered. 6 years old, and she wanted to make me feel less lonely. How is that possible? Commander, how can a child show more wisdom than our entire civilization? The tears were spreading. Other officers on the bridge began to show emotions that had been suppressed for centuries. Fear, sadness, regret, and something else. Something that felt like hope. Vexthara's hand moved away from the bombardment controls. Stand down all weapons, she ordered quietly. Commander? Luxandra asked in confusion. Stand down all weapons, Vexathara repeated more firmly. Signal all ships to withdraw to high orbit. Prepare for departure. Are we retreating, sir? Vexathara looked out at the blue planet one last time. No, Luxandra. We are learning. The Zephyrian fleet began moving away from Earth within the hour. But they were not the same beings who had arrived 9 months earlier. They carried with them questions that would reshape their entire civilization. As the ships prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Vexathara composed her final report to the Imperial High Council. It was not the victory report she had expected to. Right. Earth Expedition Final Report, she began. Mission status, complete failure, 0 successful slave acquisitions. Recommendation, mark this system as permanently off-limits. Warning. The inhabitants possess a form of psychological warfare that can convert our forces to their ideology through acts of kindness and self-sacrifice. She paused, then added a personal note that would haunt the High Council for generations to come. We came to this world seeking slaves and left with our souls. The humans have shown us what we lost when we chose power over compassion. They fight not for conquest, but for each other. They choose death before dishonor, love before logic, sacrifice before survival. We were the ones in chains all along. The transmission was sent, and the Zephyrian fleet vanished into the darkness between stars. But the story did not end there. On thousands of Zephyrian worlds, veterans of the Earth campaign began sharing their experiences. They spoke of human kindness in the face of cruelty. They described a species that grew stronger through suffering rather than weaker. They told stories of enemies who became friends through simple acts of compassion. The stories spread like wildfire through the rigid hierarchy of the Empire. Soldiers began questioning orders. Officers showed mercy to conquered populations. Entire sectors declared independence from the central authority. Within a decade, the Zephyrian Empire had collapsed not through external force, but through internal transformation. The beings who had once conquered worlds for slaves now worked to free the populations they had oppressed. And on Earth, humans rebuilt their world with hybrid technology and hard-won wisdom. They established new alliances with former enemies who had chosen redemption over revenge.